I'm Bing Wong for TaiwanPlus, and I'm here at Taipei main station on how Taiwanese people's plans for Lunar New Year could be changed.
I'm Mick Glauert for TaiwanPlus, here at Taiwan's Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I've got a report for you on whether a Taiwan-European Union investment deal could be on the horizon.
A thaw in frosty relations, Australia's foreign minister visits Beijing. Foul behavior, birdwatchers have spotted a species of duck that doesn't often come to Taiwan for the first time in nearly 10 years. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Betty Chen. The Taiwan Railway Labor Union is threatening a major strike that could take place around Lunar New Year. This comes after the union accused the Transportation Ministry of refusing to listen to their concerns. If it happens, the strike could derail many people's plans for the holidays. Bing Wang reports.
Taiwan's trains move up to 200 million passengers every year. But next month, services could grind to a halt. For almost 2 years, the Railway Union has protested plans to turn the Taiwan Railways Administration from a government agency to a state-owned company. It's meant to help turn around the loss-making administration and address safety concerns following 2 deadly train accidents in 2018 and 2021. But the Taiwan Railway Labor Union says they were not consulted on the matter and believe the trains still need maintenance to be deemed safe.
春节期间然后那么大的运输，我们不容许让列车有一点点任何的一些状况在行车不安全的情况下，我们春节的部分里面完完全全把列车停下来，然后让我们跟交通部好好的谈。
If a strike were to go ahead, hundreds of thousands of people could be affected.
宜兰回我妈娘家，
会去台中，已经订好饭店了。
我会去台东，因为过年的时候要回去看外公外婆，所以会搭台铁。
The train is the main transport Taiwanese people take to get to other places in the country. With the Lunar New Year holidays just around the corner, thousands of people will be relying on these trains to find their way back home. But without a solution to the strike, many people may have to cancel their plans or find alternative ways to celebrate with their families. The Transport Ministry is hoping for a quick resolution to ensure the safety of the trains and to continue services for passengers.
我们在协调，一直在协调，我们还在讨论哈。是。
Officials hope to keep things running smoothly and are set to meet again with protesting railway workers. But if the meetings do not lead to an agreement, the union says they will hold additional strikes during other public holidays, causing even more disruptions to train services. Howard Zhang, Alex Chen, and Bing Wang for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan's digital minister Audrey Tang says a nationwide ban on the video sharing app TikTok would need to have full public support. Tang made a comment at a ministry briefing on Tuesday and said the issue would be raised at a government data security meeting this weekend. The app, which is owned by Chinese company ByteDance, is already banned in the public sector in Taiwan. The Mainland Affairs Council says China uses the app to shape public opinion. Prosecutors in the northern county of Miaoli are moving to annul the results of last month's county chief election. Zhong Dongjing, the declared winner of the election, is under investigation for alleged vote buying. 3 other winners in lower-level positions are also being investigated. The prosecutor's office says a man surnamed Chen was caught buying votes with cash for the 4 candidates. Zhong, who ran as an independent candidate, denies any wrongdoing and says he will still take his oath of office on Sunday. His office says the move is politically motivated and they will report the matter to the government's top oversight agency. The case must be heard by a judge before any decision is made.
陈姓男子在笔录中已经十分明确地表示并没有帮中东锦买票，没想到检察官竟不予采信，更未秉持无罪推论之原则，故意入人于罪，利用司法迫害人民，明显企图借此影响选举的结果。
A delegation of European parliamentarians, including the vice chair of the International Trade Committee, has pushed for a bilateral investment agreement between the EU and Taiwan on a visit to the country. Rick Glauert reports.
It's been a booming year for Taiwan-Europe ties, with 17 official visits from European parliamentarians in the last 12 months. Delegations often talk about shared values, such as democracy and human rights, as well as standing up to China. But this time, trade and investment are at the top of the agenda. On a visit to Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen, a delegation led by the Vice Chair of the European Parliament's International Trade Committee said it was pushing for a bilateral investment agreement between the EU and Taiwan. Trade between the two grew 32% in 2021, and Taiwan, often shut out of global agreements, is keen to bolster trade ties.
未来我们期待双方能够一起加强经贸交流、供应链安全，并且加速推动台欧盟 BIA 的进程，让双方的企业更有信心扩大投资。我也相信，透过推动科技、绿能、医疗卫生等跨领域的合作，能为双方的人民创造更多的福祉。
But China and the European Union are each other's biggest trading partner, and China is known to punish countries economically for getting too close to Taiwan. It's a threat that often divides European nations.
I'm sure there are some countries that want closer ties more quickly and some countries that are a little bit more reluctant, depending also on the relationship that these countries have with China, in the sense that one cannot predict what the consequences might be. One can only be prepared. And in fact, in the Trade Committee, we are now preparing a host of new instruments that are exactly meant to give us the tools we need to respond to economic coercion.
Both Taiwan and European countries have been touting warming ties in the face of increasing aggression from China. But this bonhomie has yet to translate into those all-important trade and investment deals. Chen and Rick Lowett in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan will open a new representative office in Montreal, Canada. The Foreign Ministry says that the establishment of the new office will, quote, further cooperation and exchanges between the two countries. It did not say when the office would officially open. This will be Taiwan's fourth representative office in a North American country. A new survey suggests people in Taiwan want the country to interact more with China. That's despite worsening ties between Taipei and Beijing. Taiwan's Global Views magazine spoke to more than 1,000 Taiwanese adults earlier this month. More than 40% of respondents said their overall impression of China had worsened, with fewer than 17% saying it had improved. But almost 60% of respondents said Taiwan should increase its interactions with China. Only 22% said exchanges should decrease. The results follow years of escalating tensions between the two countries. China and Taiwan suspended most direct flights during the COVID-19 pandemic, but now both have abandoned their zero-COVID policies. Officials in Taiwan are considering reopening those transport links. To learn more about those results, says about Taiwanese views of China, our reporter Stash Butler spoke to Taipei-based analyst Jeremy Huaizhejiang.
More than 40% of people told this recent survey that their overall impression of China had got worse. And that's a big change from 2018, when more than half said it had actually got better. What's changed in the last 4 years?
There has been a deterioration in relations. Of course, I think COVID contributed partly to that. And also in terms of, Taiwanese people's perception of, what's happening in Hong Kong, especially after the national security law. And also, as we've seen in the 20th Party Congress, Xi Jinping cementing his possibility for a third term, also, just increases that impression in Taiwan that China is under an authoritarian state. So that sense of, both sides being very different has just, accelerated in the past few years.
Despite that, as you say, kind of, negative or generally negative outlook on China that's given by this survey, 60% of the respondents said that they thought that China and Taiwan should interact more. How do you explain that result?
I think you also have to go back to the survey question itself, right? Because the survey questions ask if you're supporting, exchange or interaction, right? Those are very neutral words. You would have to be a very hardcore sort of an anti-exchange, anti-interaction person to be able to say no to these kind of things.
How much do Chinese and Taiwanese people actually interact with each other face to face? And how has that changed over the last 15 years or so?
Obviously, because of COVID, people-to-people exchange has, decreased by a lot. But prior to the pandemic, of course, there had for a long time been very vibrant, academic exchanges and also tourism activities across the strait. And I think, of course, these people-to-people exchanges creates a more sort of three-dimensional picture of, people from, these two very different places, and it increases, people's stake ownership in this kind of relationship, and it increases, mutual understanding.
Do you think that the lack of travel between China and Taiwan right now is partly to blame for the state of cross-strait relations? And do you think that perhaps reopening, the government's talking about reopening the mini three links between China and Taiwan's outlying islands and perhaps allowing more cross-strait flights? Do you think that could help improve things?
I think from my personal opinion that these decreased activities are the symptom of the problem that we are facing right now. They are not the cause of the problem. Current tensions between China and Taiwan are not a result of these decreased people-to-people interactions. It's actually the geopolitical structure or tensions between the two governments that has created a very unhelpful environment for these people-to-people interactions to take place. I think people do want normal interaction activities to take place once again, but obviously that has to be conducive to actual situations on ground.
That was TaiwanPlus reporter Stosh Butler speaking with Taipei-based analyst Jeremy Huai-Zhejiang. A Taipei elementary school lunch supplier has had its operation suspended after week-old soup was served to students by accident. On Monday, children at Lixing Elementary School noticed a bad smell in their soup. The soup was meant to be recycled as food waste, but kitchen workers seemingly confused it for the day's lunch. The children told their parents about the incident, one of whom then informed the local authorities. 2 students did consume small amounts of the soup, but did not report any discomfort afterwards. The company responsible for supplying the school lunches has issued an apology. It will also undergo an inspection by the Department of Health. Bird watchers in Taiwan's southeastern Taidong County were treated to a rare sight this week. A species of migratory duck that doesn't often appear in Taiwan showed up in a local river. Leslie Liao has more.
Ducks, ducks, and more ducks. Mallards aren't a rare sight in East Taiwan this time of year. But birdwatchers are getting worked up over this guy who's recently shown up in Taidong County. That's a falcated duck, a type that doesn't come to Taiwan often. In fact, this is the first time the birds have been spotted here in nearly 10 years. Falcated ducks come from places like northeastern China and Siberia. They tend to spend winters in areas around North Korea and Japan. But falcated ducks have been known to get lost and follow other duck species that do migrate to Taiwan, which is usually how they end up here. However, on this occasion, experts suspect that man-made changes to Taidong's agricultural landscape may have appealed to these mallards. But even though artificial alterations to the landscape have brought in the rarely seen falcated duck, this isn't necessarily a good thing for birds native to the area.
那当我们挖了水质以后，却会造成原本利用沙地的这一些鸟类，譬如说夜莺，譬如说中山紫唇，它的生存上面的这些问题。
Experts say that more consideration should be given to local ecology when developing farms in the area. That way, both people and animals can live in harmony, with neither side crying foul. Patrick Chen and Leslie Liao for TaiwanPlus.
Coming up, scientists are using some new technology to try and preserve the Great Barrier Reef for future generations. Stay tuned to find out how.
In the face of adversity, the power of truth.
A roadmap for a just and open world. Charted by the freest country in Asia.
5, 4, 3, 2.
A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Ian Kavat. Taiwanese semiconductor giant TSMC.
Public buses to be electric by 2030. A mission that begins with listening.
And telling the stories of Taiwan.
In Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
Drawing insight from original thinkers.
And sharing it with the world. TaiwanPlus News, a voice of freedom in Asia.
For more news from Taiwan and around the world, head to TaiwanPlus.com and download the TaiwanPlus app.
你看到它的第一眼，你就知道它是你的狗，这是一种很奇妙的感觉。
毛小孩就是小孩啊，一样。
他们就是玩到累了，然后休息一下，然后起来再继续玩。
我发现我们的生活好像不能没有狗。
我们就说，其实他们是派来救赎我们的。
快好了，快好了，最后一个了。
饲主其实都很相信我们，因为很相信我们，他对我们就会抱有很大的期望。
他本来不吃饭，经过一番努力之后，他回到他原本该有快乐的样子。哇，我超级开心！
我的愿景就让每一只动物都可以获得好的专科治疗服务。
你要再陪我走10年，好不好？好的话，再星期快点。
Pup Nation, every Monday, 8 p.m. on TaiwanPlus.
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky is on his way to the United States. It's his first trip abroad since Russia invaded Ukraine in February. Zelensky is set to meet with U.S. President Joe Biden and with the U.S. Congress. The visit is meant to reinforce Washington's support for Kyiv, and Biden is expected to announce $2 billion in new security aid for Ukraine. The meeting comes as U.S. lawmakers are also set to vote on a $45 billion emergency assistance package for the country. Washington has already provided over $65 billion in aid to Ukraine since the invasion began. Australia and China have agreed to pursue high-level dialogues on trade and security after years of frosty relations. That's according to Australia's Foreign Minister Penny Wong, who is on a 2-day trip to Beijing. Wong met with her Chinese counterpart, Wang Yi, as the two countries mark 50 years of diplomatic relations. It comes after years of strained ties. Beijing imposed sanctions on Australia after Canberra called for an international inquiry into the origins of the COVID-19 pandemic. To find out more about the implications of Penny Wong's trip, reporter Rick Glauert spoke to Roger Huang of Macquarie University in Sydney.
What is the significance of Penny Wong's trip and what might she be hoping to achieve?
This is actually quite significant because China and Australia have been in a serious diplomatic freeze really in the last few years, especially especially during the COVID pandemic period. So this will be the first minister level, especially foreign minister of Australia visiting China, I believe, in something like 3 or 4 years. I think it is the 50-year anniversary of the official diplomatic relations between the People's Republic of China and Australia. So it's been kind of a good opportunity for China and Australia to try to reset their relationship.
This trip is being viewed as a patching up of relations between Australia and China. Could you tell us why the two countries have not been getting along or what they have come to blows over?
The relationship between China and Australia has gone through really dramatic changes, right? It's really only, a little bit less than 10 years ago that China and Australia are almost best buddies in many ways. And it's, of course, China's trade relationship with Australia, as is China's trade relationship with a lot of countries, where Australia's top export market is China, right? So there's a lot of economic business links and interests between Australia and China. Now, relationship has deteriorated really even before COVID, when Australia has basically exposed these alleged Chinese interference in the Australian political scene, whether it's kind of alleged espionage activities, foreign interference with Australian politicians, the electoral process, etc.
And what do you think this trip says about the way Australia is approaching its relations with China? How might they differ from other countries such as Europe or the US?
Now, of course, China in the last few years has, introduced this wolf warrior diplomacy, which has really not gone down well in the quote-unquote liberal democratic societies, right? So it's been looked at very negatively, whether in Australia or in the US or elsewhere in the UK, etc. So I think this is not just Australia or the US or others, but also from a Chinese side, a recognition that there needs to be a rethinking of how to engage these democratic societies. But at the same time, we don't see a great difference between their, Australia's formal position, which is that on the one hand, they want to continue and rebuild particularly a trade relationship with China, but at the same time, it is not going to detract from still defending the quintessential Australian values well, and it will allegedly, at least anyways, that it will not keep quiet when abuses might be happening, in Chinese-controlled areas, as well as China's relationship with Taiwan, for example.
And that was Roger Huang of Macquarie University speaking to Rick Gloward about the Australian Foreign Minister's trip to China. USS Force B-52 bombers and F-22 fighter jets joined South Korea's Air Force for joint drills on Tuesday. The show of military force comes as North Korea has ramped up ballistic missile tests this year. North Korea on Tuesday slammed plans for unprecedented military spending by Japan, another U.S. ally. Pyongyang said it would take a resolute and decisive military step as Japan looks to develop counter-strike capabilities against North Korea. Thai military helicopters, ships, and drones on Wednesday were racing to find any remaining survivors of a military ship that sank on Sunday. One person was rescued alive on Tuesday from the Gulf of Thailand. The bodies of 6 sailors have been brought ashore, and 23 crewmen are still missing. The U.S.-made corvette suffered an engine failure and was knocked down by a 4-meter wave off Thailand's coast. 105 people were on board. Australia's Great Barrier Reef is one of the most diverse biomes in the world. It's home to over 1,500 species of fish, as well as marine mammals and reptiles. But climate change, pollution, and other factors are damaging the reef. Now, a team of scientists are working to save it with new cryopreservation technology. Eric Gout reports.
Coral spawning in darkness. When the conditions are just right, coral release sperm and eggs into the water. This coral was removed from Australia's Great Barrier Reef so scientists could gather the released gametes.
This guy even has his tentacles out, you can see him.
The reef is under grave threat from pollution and climate change. So the scientists are working to ensure the coral that makes up this amazing living structure can be preserved.
The corals have just started releasing their gamete bundles, and so what they're doing at the moment is collecting them from the water surface with some pipettes, and we're getting them at a certain ratio, so the same amount of bundles as water in the tubes, and so that will give us the right concentration for cryopreserving the sperm and assessing the motility. And then we can send the eggs back for these guys to use for their fertilization experiments.
If the fertilization is successful, the resulting larvae won't be planted in the reef immediately. Instead, they'll be frozen at nearly 200 degrees below zero.
One of the reasons we want to freeze, or the technical word is cryopreserve, coral larvae is that climate change is altering our reefs. And if we can secure or save the biodiversity of coral and their genetic diversity, then we'll have tools for the future to really help restore the reefs. And this technology for coral reefs in the future is a real game changer.
The scientists are using a new technique that they hope will help preserve more samples for the future. It's the first ever trial of this method on Great Barrier Reef coral.
It's called modern mesh technology, and it allows you to freeze and thaw very rapidly. And if you weren't using this technology, you might have to use some very sophisticated tools like a laser or other things. But this is going to allow us to take this technology to the reef.
And so the benefit of that is that we can do things faster. And if you go fast, then you can actually get that biological system to avoid crystallizing in ice on the way down or on the way back. And you can actually successfully vitrify it, which then puts it into an indefinite storage mode.
Cryopreservation is just one of many programs designed to save the Great Barrier Reef. Scientists are trying out different methods because they say time is running out as climate change continues to worsen.
Emissions reduction is absolutely critical, but we know that it's no longer enough to protect our reef from the warming that's already locked in. So we know we have a 10-year window to really make a difference, and we need to accelerate and scale up solutions that help our reef adapt, resist and recover from the impacts of climate change. And that's where innovative projects like this come in.
Scientists hope this technology can help them create millions of coral, which they can eventually use to repopulate the Great Barrier Reef. Eason Pan and Eric Gao for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching Taiwan Plus News. I'm Betty Chen. Take care and see you next time.